Right. Started recording. Oh, I need to. My mouth is dry. Hold on a minute.
Oh my god, Dean.
I'm sorry. Oh, okay. I need to put my food down. I'm getting more distracted. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the InkGuild podcast. I'm Dean, joined today by Alex and Gabe. Say hi, guys.
Hi.
Hello.
Cool. So today we are going to be talking about the Hunger Games era of YA. And I know that that's kind of a bit of a weird term that I pulled out of nowhere, basically, but the Hunger Games of YA is, let's say, a term that I've coined a lot of early stories from, or a lot of stories from the early 2010s, um, that I guess were kind of in relation to the Hunger Games. A lot of the stories that I'm talking about and we will be talking about have a lot of very similar tropes, settings, and I guess issues that we're going to be talking about because this was a very prominent point in terms of young adult books. So, um, yeah, so I guess our first thing is, as I've already explained, like what is exactly like the Hunger Games era of YA. Um, I guess the biggest story that comes with that is the name itself, The Hunger Games, written by Suzanne Collins. I'm pretty sure a lot of you are familiar with those books, and in subsequent years, there have been a lot of, I don't want to say direct copies, but enough stories that are very familiar to it, and that's why we're talking about the genre. So the big three that we've talked about that kind of encapsulate that era is The Hunger Games, Divergent, and Maze Runner. But there also is a lot of other stories that we'll be talking about right now. But first, I guess let's just talk about those first three books. So, I guess to start, I'll talk about how I kind of came across them. So, I first read The Hunger Games out of those three, and then I eventually kind of read The Maze Runner, like the first book of The Maze Runner, and then I skimmed through Divergent, because I don't know, just The Hunger Games was definitely my favorite out of those three. Granted, like I read all of the books within that series, and I really did like this. Like I really did like The Hunger Games, but when it came to The Maze Runner, um, I think I was more familiar with the movie rather than the book. And to be honest, the concept didn't really excite me because at that point I had been familiar with the kind of style that they were going towards, even if it were completely different people, you know, or even if it was a completely different cast and like different settings, universes, whatever. Like I still knew the formula, and that's the same thing that goes with Divergent, especially. And yeah, so I guess Alex, like, how did you come across those first big three?
Okay. I think I actually read The Maze Runner first. Um, one of a family friend recommended the books to me. So I read The Maze Runner, and I remember quite enjoying it actually. And I read the second book in the series, and I was a little less impressed. And then I read the third book in the series, and I think I was even less impressed. Um, and then at some point I started the prequel,
Oh
and
yeah, I
never
forgot there was a
finished it.
prequel.
There was a prequel. Yeah, I started it. I never finished it. I had it for like 5 years, never finished it. I actually just returned it to my friend who I borrowed it from like a couple weeks ago. But yeah, I never finished that one. because I remember thinking that the concept of the first book was really cool, and then like the more I learned about the world building of it, I was just kind of like, okay, this is boring. Um, the Hunger Games I read, like when they blew up and everyone was reading them. I think I read the first book in literally like a single day. It was in middle school, and our gym class was canceled for the day, so our teachers just let us hang out in a classroom and do whatever we wanted for the whole period. So I read the entire first Hunger Games book in that class.
Nice.
Um, like I just got so sucked into it and absorbed into it, and I thought it was such a cool idea. The second book in that case, Catching Fire, I remember like thinking the first half was really boring and then the second half was really entertaining, and I hated the third book the first time I read it. Well, I say the first time I've read it, like I've read it since then, which I haven't. Um, yeah, and then Divergent, I've never read. I think I borrowed it from one of my friends who really liked it. Um, but before I had read it, I got like a quick rundown of the plot from a friend of mine who wasn't a fan. So I already knew everything that was going to happen. And I started reading it and went, wow, I really hate the main character. And then I just never finished it.
I
um,
It really says something about Divergent that I literally cannot ever remember what the name of the protagonist is. I always just call the protagonist Shailene Woodley. I do not
I
know the
think
name of
it's
the character.
Triss. I think her name's Triss.
I
I
thought
think
Triss
it's
was
Triss. Hold
Oh,
on.
Triss.
see, no, that's a revelation for me because I've always been calling her Shailene Woodley.
Yeah,
It's
Beatrice
some
Pryor goes by
Okay.
Triss
yeah.
for short. Why do I know that?
it's probably it's probably because
You
for someone who
just
never read the books, you probably have paid a little bit more attention to it than I have.
you have a folder of obscure YA knowledge just tucked away in your frontal lobe.
Yeah,
I
I
bet
guess
that's it.
so.
Yeah. When scouring through the many names of her multiverse, Triss just happens to be a name that's in there.
No, it's I have like a good memory for that kind of stuff. Like I'll just remember like random little like trivia things like that. Like I know the protagonist of this book is called this, even though I've never read it. I don't know why. That's just how my brain works.
Okay, Gabe, how about you? What's been your experience with those books?
I read the first three. I read the not the first. I read the three Hunger Games books when I was like in elementary school. Um, and that was the most. That was the most I ever read YA. Not YA, but that was the most I ever read like that specific. I guess genre of like dystopian YA fiction. Um after the first movie came out, I never read Maze Runner and I never read Divergent, but I watched the first two Divergent movies and then I watched Maze Runner and then eventually I was in high school so I just stopped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess to kind of move on then, because we were talking about those three books and because there still might be some people that aren't really sure like what we're talking about. Um, we wanted to. So I know that to the two of you, I had mentioned before how we were gonna have this certain structure, but I want to change it a little bit so that we first talk about the tropes commonly associated with the Hunger Games era, so people kind of understand. So I guess the reason why like I've called it the Hunger Games era when I was planning out the episode was that there were a lot of tropes that the Hunger Games popularized that suddenly in this era they were just kind of everywhere in most of the big YA books. Hunger Games, Divergent, Maze Runner, they all had one, two, three, if not almost all of the tropes. So yeah, let's just go over some of them right now. And I think the first one that has been pretty common for all of them is they're all set in a dystopia.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Yep.
Man, that I've really gotten sick of dystopias because of those books. Like I don't know, like I get the kind of allure behind it when it was like super big with the Hunger Games, but then suddenly when I was just starting to see it everywhere and like how every single kind of world building was set around the world being screwed basically, having a very oppressive government, a clear class system between the rich and the poor, um I guess like, clear disparities and everything. And like I was like, okay, so I don't really, or I can't really separate, the Hunger Games is dystopia from Divergence, and I can't really separate Divergence from Maze Runner because they're all dystopias, right? Like they obviously have their own little niches, but I don't care. Like,
Yeah, they're all dystopias, and they're all the exact same dystopia too. Like
mm-hmm.
it's always I found this a very Disney dystopia, if that makes any sense. Like there's never it's always like just the vague concept of, oh, there's a there's a there's like an oppressive mean government man, and he's vaguely a metaphor for Hitler. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's that's the biggest thing I noticed now that I've said Hitler. Like that's the biggest thing that I've noticed, that they're all like just vague versions of Nazis is what I've noticed.
I don't think that's true about the Maze Runner, though. If I
I don't
remember
think I don't know if
correctly,
that's true with the
Yeah.
Maze Runner. Maze Runner is a whole other. I don't
the
even
Maze
remember what
Runner
the
was
fuck the plot twist in Maze Runner was. Isn't it
the
like
ma- no, I remember it. It was the Earth had been devastated by like solar flares,
Yeah.
and the solar flares released like this new disease that like drove people crazy, and the only people that weren't really affected by it were children, which is why all the people in the maze were like they were like teenagers with really big brains. Because
that's
if
big
Man,
brain?
that really was a series, wasn't it?
Yeah, okay. So it does not apply to Maze Runner, but I feel like with Divergent and Hunger Games, there's just very vague, like, there's mean police and there's mean big government man, and they're
Yeah.
they're very mean.
See,
We're
okay,
very
so sorry, go ahead, Gabe.
No, it's just I just they're just big mean man,
Yeah.
big mean man in house with gun.
Yeah. So, Gabe, you had said earlier that you were a little more familiar with the movies, like aesthetically between like Divergent, Maze Runner, or just between Divergent and Hunger Games. Like, how do you think the aesthetic was?
Oh,
Like costume design, presentation, all that stuff.
they're
Like in
so
terms of
different.
dystopia.
I mean, they're so distinct from one another. No, uh, I actually, if you showed me a picture of like the Hunger Games world, and you photoshopped Jennifer Lawrence out, and you showed me a picture of like the Divergent worlds, and you photoshopped what's her face out, I would not be able to tell you which one was which. Like, I would not be able to tell you which one of these gray, kind of ugly cities with police who wear like vaguely cyberpunk outfits is. I would, and like there's holograms. I would not be able to tell you which one was which. They're identical.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the point that I was trying to get across. It's like there's really nothing here. It's the same dystopia,
Yeah.
right? And at least with the Maze Runner, there were monsters and potential zombies and shit. But even then, it's still like,
Maze Runner was a little bit batshit. I'll give it that.
yeah.
It had.
I mean, Kate, no, Maze Runner in the first book, first movie, it takes place in like this giant maze, which I still think looks really cool,
Yeah.
honestly. And
Yeah.
then the second book took place like on the surface of like the earth as it was scorched by the sun. So you go more into the like post-apocalyptic kind of vibes from there.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember what happened in the third book, I'll be
From what I
honest. I think
remember
I
in
there
the
don't
was a
movie,
remember
it's
either.
city.
just the city again. It's just that's the one where it's like, that's why I just conflate these two, because even though the first one has like a unique setting, by the time they're in the third movie, it's like, okay, now we're just in a city and there's mean policemen in cyberpunk outfits again. We're
They
back.
they
We're
Yeah.
back
actually
to
released a third movie. They did release a third movie. I
I
didn't
think
watch
they
it. I
did.
didn't even know there was a third movie.
they released a third movie. It's called The Death Cure.
Yeah, it's the Death Cure.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
I think we're getting a little
And
too distracted. We should get back to tropes.
wait, hang on, no.
sorry,
Before we do
sorry.
that, can we talk about how the government in Maze Runner is called Wicked.
Are they actually?
I forgot about
Oh
that.
no,
actually.
Alex!
What?
Your microphone.
Is it better?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is your sanity okay?
Is
Okay.
it
Is it really called The Wicked though?
Yeah, it's called WCKD. They're just called Wicked. I don't
That's
know what
funny.
it stands for, but it's hilarious to me.
Okay. All right. I think before Alex's mic gets all scratchy again, Alex, why don't you tell us a trope that's commonly associated with the Hunger Games era?
Yes, I wanted to talk about the special snowflake protagonist. That's what I wanted to talk about. It's like, I mean, this is something that's still an issue in YA, in my opinion. But I think this is about where it started to get really bad. Like I think like Katniss to an extent has an excuse for her stuff because she has to hunt for her family, so she has these skills that like are able to protect her in the arena. But then you go to like Thomas, is that his name? Thomas in the
Yeah,
Maze
Thomas from
Runner?
the Maze Runner. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Thomas, he was like the smartest of all of the boys, so that he was the one who like designed the maze and put them into it, and that's why he was the last person in the maze. So he was very, very special snowflake. And then there's Triss. There's Triss, um, who, I mean, the books are called Divergent. It's literally about like the whole premise is that she's a special snowflake. That's literally the point of the books. So I don't know what else I can say about it. Um, but that started to be a very common thing, is like the protagonist is someone who doesn't fit in. If it's a female protagonist, she's not like other girls. And that kind of stuff started becoming really popular around that time period in my memory.
Yeah. Like, I think one of the closest tropes that I can associate with that is the chosen one, which separately I was gonna make my own comment, but I think the special snowflake protagonist is a good way of showing it. Like they're like between those two, the chosen one and the special snowflake, it's just there isn't really much that you can kind of separate. Like they're destined from the beginning to like save the world or stuff, or like stop an oppressive government. It's the same shit. And
Yeah.
really, like, the only things that kind of help make this trope a little bit more unique, according to some authors, is to make them look physically different. Like you give them tattoos, or you give them facial piercings, or like you could even just completely change their like look altogether, or like you could just completely go outright anime, like
Yeah.
anime-ish with the look altogether.
Or you
But
give them pretty eyes.
so like there seriously isn't that much of a difference between the chosen one protagonist with dystopic YAs. Basically, it's so thing.
Yeah.
It's still so familiar. Like they're like, I guess, yeah, you say Katniss is the exception because she kind of had to learn everything. But when your character from the beginning has been like, oh yeah, they're Divergent, or like they're the smartest oneness in Maze Runner, or like, as when eventually we talk about other books, we'll see kind of a comparison. But like, yeah, like it feels so thing. It just feels icky to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not saying from here on out that every YA protagonist should just be like, starting from nothing, right? Because then that's gonna get repetitive. But then just, I don't know, just find
Give
a
your
way.
characters diverse backstories.
Yeah, make
Yeah.
them feel like people. But anyway, Gabe, how about you? What's a trope that you can kind of link to the Hunger Games era?
This is sort of similar to the special snowflake one, but it's how often protagonists are like edgy, I guess is the word I'm thinking of. How like they're just completely humorless cold,
kind of defy society.
Yeah, they're rebellious, but they're like rebellious, and they're like, I'm gonna stick it to the man. I'm divergent. I'm doing the 3-hand whistle thing from Hunger Games. I don't know what that's called. I think it has a name. Take that, government. Like it. I don't know. It always makes me laugh.
Yeah.
Mm.
All right then. I want to keep talking about tropes actually, because there are a lot of tropes.
Hell yeah.
Um,
Should we talk about love triangles?
yes.
We need to talk about love triangles.
Oh no.
We need to.
Alex.
Like.
Alex, please. Alex. Yes.
How about now?
You sound great.
It's good.
Apparently, I can't laugh into this microphone, so don't make me laugh, Gabe.
That's saying something. Gabe, you are very hilarious. Okay. Anyway, yeah, love triangles. We've stated. Yeah, we've stated in a previous episode that like collectively the three of us hate love triangles already. So having it everywhere has just been painful.
I blame this era of writing for the love triangles. Granted, I think you can trace it back like a little further because, you know, Twilight, I think, came out before the Hunger Games.
Mm-hmm.
But it was definitely around this era that those started becoming super prominent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every book had to have its own PETA and
Gale.
what the fuck?
PETA, Gale,
that's
Katniss. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And once again, like I said with Twilight, it would be so much better if it was a legitimate triangle. Why didn't PETA and Gale make googly eyes at each other? What the fuck?
I think they hated each other actually. Like
Yeah.
they didn't remember them not getting along at all.
I hate love triangles so much. Yeah, when they try to force that conflict whenever the two male love interests are like meeting each other. Oh my god. Yeah, it'd be hella interesting if they were gay.
Yeah. Like, I get that they're supposed to hate each other, but come on, Suzanne Collins, haven't you ever heard of hate fucking? Jesus.
Yeah.
Man, Gabe is really pushing your limits right now, Alex.
I'm trying. It's fine. I'll just remember how my day started and go back to being miserable. It's fine.
You just need to remember that a court of thorns and roses exists. Anyway, Alex, how about you? What's another trope that you can associate with that or with the era?
I didn't think of any others. There's so many though.
Okay. I've written down a couple.
Like, okay, there's like this secret underground rebellion.
Oh my god, yeah.
Is like here, like in the Hunger Games, it's the District 13 people, because District 13 is secretly alive. I think there's like a secret society going on in Divergent. I don't know because I never finished the books and I never watched the movies.
I remember Naomi Watts is like the leader of a secret group, and then she's like, she has like an edgy haircut or something. And then I think in the Maze Runner, it's Gus from Breaking Bad. I don't remember his character's name at all, but. And I could be totally wrong about what his role in those movies too, but I do know there's something along those lines in Maze Runner where like the kids all come out of the base, they're like, oh my god, the Wickets come out after us, and then Giancarlo Esposito shows up and he's like, no, I'm the leader of an underground resistance and we're secretly fighting back. So you guys come on, let's take shit down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's the start of secret underground rebellions and stuff that definitely trail into YA even today.
Yeah,
we've been working for years against this oppressive dystopian government, and we have like armories and weapons and guns, and we have like high level militias, but man, we just couldn't get that done without this generic white teenager.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, exactly.
Fair. Oh, there's a trope that I want to talk about. Actually, I've mentioned this also in a previous episode. I think I did it with Jessica, but I hate the sorting house trope.
Oh yeah.
Which is, kind of everyone gets, I guess, like separated. I don't know if that's the right word, but like they get put into a certain like umbrella term that defines who they are, basically. So like, like when I say sorting house, a lot of people kind of associate it with Harry Potter. So there's Gryffindor, Slytherin,
I was gonna say I even hate
Hufflepuff.
that back to the fucking origin of it. That shit's been stupid since Harry Potter.
Yeah, and to now suddenly see it blow up, especially in this era, like with
see just a bunch of authors completely miss the fact that it's fucking stupid to have an organization system that will categorize people. Will categorize like a third or a fourth of the people into one group that is just arbitrarily evil for no reason.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, like with Hunger Games, it was through the districts. With Divergent, it was through I don't even know what the hell they were called.
Thing was.
Yeah,
I think they're called factions.
Oh, that's even lazy. That's so lazy. But yeah, so through Divergent, it was factions, and through Maze Runner, it was, I guess, through roles. So like you were either a hunter gatherer, you were a Maze Runner or whatever, and like, God, it's so. I don't know.
I think with the Hunger Games, again, I think it's a little different because they were literally separated by like regions, like they were physically in the district.
Yeah,
but
I'll give it props that like they weren't born in the capital and then like sent off.
I guess that's fair. Yeah.
So like I get what you're saying, but then I think I don't know if this was like Suzanne Collins's fault. I think this is more what the fandom did, was they're like, oh, these are the traits that we see primarily from the characters from these districts. So obviously all of the people in those districts have those traits, and therefore they turned into like the sorting house.
Yeah.
The sorting hat house thing.
That's fair.
But I don't think they started out that way, because they were literally like the actual physical regions that they were living in.
Mm-hmm. And at that point, I think it's closer to like what like the whole sorting hat thing is like thinly disguised as. It's just like fantasy races. It's just like, oh, instead of orcs and elves, we have fucking Slytherins and Ravenclaws.
Yeah.
But it means the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Divergent is definitely the worst for this one. Again, like Maze Runner, you kind of get it because they have a society that they're trying to run, and having people like perform certain roles in the society is the way to society.
And
it's the way to like make it run.
And it's not like totally arbitrary. Like if you have like someone who's like a big beefy boy, then you might assign them to like a big beefy boy position. If you have someone who's like a good at gathering supplies, you might assign them to be a gatherer. It's not totally arbitrary, but in Divergent, it's just.
Yeah, Divergent is definitely the worst for this. And again, this is the whole premise of the books, as far as I can tell, is there's 5 factions. Everyone is supposed to fit nicely into one of them, and no one does, because it's impossible to be like only one of those traits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's my whole issue with that system in general. It's like you kind of lock a character's personality, and I've explained it more in that previous episode, but yeah, it locks you, or it locks your character into them being really brave, or them being very cunning or something. And to me, like that loves like unpredictable characters, or at least like characters that you can kind of see how they react on the spot rather than in a premeditated manner. Like it's just lazy. And you're right, like with Hunger Games and Maze Runner, like you can kind of excuse it, but to me it's still in its own way there, I guess. Like I have an appreciation for it, and I know how kind of different they make it, but that doesn't really change the fact that like it's a pretty obvious thing.
Actually, can we talk about the sorting hat stuff for a minute?
We can talk about we can talk about it after you fix your mic.
Oh my god.
See, now you know how I felt whenever Discord cuts out on me.
Yeah, Sorting Hat. Unpopular opinion, I don't hate it. Um, because I think this is something that the Harry Potter fandom has done right. And I mean, I think the Harry Potter fandom has like its issues like any fandom, but I feel like it's definitely done a good job of taking the uh, questionable material that Rowling proposed and made it better. In that I feel like in the case of the Sorting Hat and the Hogwarts houses, it's not about like you only have this one trait. It's more about this is like the trait that this character values the most or is most likely to display out of all of them. That makes sense.
I guess that's fair enough. Yeah.
That's how I've like come to interpret it. Because when I think like it's really popular to take characters from other fandoms and sort them into the Hogwarts houses because people like to do that.
Yeah.
Um, for me, when I do it, I'm like, well, this character is really reckless a lot of the time, which is a very Gryffindor trait. But they're also really ambitious, which is a Slytherin trait. But they're also really caring, which is a Hufflepuff trait. And then it's kind of finding the balance of which things are the most important to them and which of those traits define them the most and putting them there.
Yeah.
But I also think that saying someone is purely like a character is only brave and therefore they're a Gryffindor is super unrealistic because you're going to have brave characters that are also really smart and really ambitious and really kind. And if into all of the houses, then it's just a matter of which one is the most important to you, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That's my opinion on the Sorting Hat.
I guess then it's just my issue with Divergent's sorting system then. Because it was clearly like, okay, I guess if you're like Allegiant, then you're brave or something. But then that's really all that they kind of give you. I could be wrong, and maybe I might get fact checked eventually.
If you asked me to tell you, I can fucking tell you which of the.
I don't think that's the right term
groups
for it,
are
but
I don't know.
Divergent. I could not tell you for the life of me. If you put a gun to my head, tell my family I love them.
I pulled them up.
Okay.
There's abnegation, which is the selfless. There's amity, which are the peaceful. There's candor, which are the honest. Erudite, which are the intelligent. And dauntless, the brave.
Oh, it was dauntless. Okay. Where did it... I know Allegiant is one of the names of the books.
Yeah,
I was thinking dauntless.
So.
Yeah, I was thinking dauntless. Okay. Anyway, so we had been kind of talking about the big three, but let's explore some more books that kind of fit into that era. And not necessarily like, they might have been released during the Hunger Games prime, or maybe they were released like years before or years after. But yeah, let's just look at some books. And the first one that I kind of want to start out with is the Shatter Me series by, I don't want to, like, Tahera Mafi? I think that's how you say your name. And I'll correct myself when I'm wrong, or like I'll correct myself eventually. But like, yeah, the Shatter Me books definitely do fit plenty of the tropes that we've talked about. So it is also dystopic. The character has the power to quite literally kill upon touch. So she's kind of roguelike, but like she also has powers to, or she also has the power to like quite literally cause like earthquakes and shit. And it's been a while since I've kept up with the book, so I'm probably butchering the explanation right now. But like, there's an underground revolution in the Shatter Me books. There's definitely a love triangle at play, and it's I appreciate the books for what they are. I think especially because of Mafi's writing style, like it's something that kind of helps present everything a little bit more interestingly. But even then, like, it's still a lot of the same tropes. And it was released the first book was, I think, released in 2011, so it definitely fits that kind of peak.
Mm-hmm.
Alex, you said that you were going to mention a series before we started recording, right?
Yes. Yes. My mic is still good.
Yes, your mic is great.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, the book series that I want to talk about is called The Selection by Kiera Cass. Um, the first book was released in 2012, I believe, and it basically takes place in like a future like North America. I'm not entirely certain of like where it is. It's like the country. It takes place in a country called Ilea, which is at least the U.S. and Canada combined into one. Um, and there's a government, like there's a monarch now, and every time that one of the like monarch's children comes of age, they have this thing called the selection, where one girl, because it's always the prince, because you know gender roles and stuff. One girl from each of the 35 provinces, states, whatever they're called, is brought to the castle and basically has to compete for the prince's affections. Very like reality, like matchmaking TV show kind of
Ew.
stuff. Yeah. So the main character, the main character's name is America Singer, which is just a terrible name. Um, oh, and we have to talk about the God, what are they called in this book? There's like a caste system. Um, there's like 8 levels. One, if you're one, that means you're the royal family. Then there's like the twos and the threes, which are nobles and celebrities. And then I don't remember what all of them are. And then you get down to 8, and 8 is like the homeless people basically that get kicked out. And yeah, and it's everyone's like stuck in their caste system and can't really move unless you get selected. And so America is from the fifth caste, which is like artisans basically. So her family are musicians and artists and that kind of stuff. Um, and usually, people who are selected aren't anyone lower than like the third or fourth caste. So then when she gets selected, it's like a big deal. So you know, there's the special snowflake. She's like more of a peasant than the other girls, and therefore she's not like other girls. um, there's a love triangle going on. She has a boyfriend at home who she's been kind of with for a while. He's in a lower caste, so it's like a big deal. She can't really be with him. When she gets selected to become like the prince's potential future bride, her boyfriend, or now ex-boyfriend, comes to the castle with her, gets hired as like a guard at the castle, so that she has both of her love interests at the castle just circling for some reason. There's also like a bit of a rebellion going on, but nothing ever comes of it. Like she doesn't join the rebellion. She wins the selection and becomes like marries the prince. Um, and and we also get dual love triangles in this too, because you know the prince is competing, or the prince has 35 women competing for his affections, and he at the end it's down to like America and one other girl, so he also has a love triangle thing going on while America has a love triangle thing going on. It's real great, except it's like it's all the tropes except without any cool sword fighting or like fight sequences at all, and without the rebellion that overthrows the government.
Oh
It's
my
just pretty
god.
girls in dresses in front of cameras trying to get a prince to date them. That's
Bruh.
all 5
Bruh.
books. Well, that's the first 3 books. The second, like, it's split into like 2 parts. There's the first 3 books, which are about America trying to win the hand of Prince Maxon, and then the second half, the last 2 books, are about their daughter going through her own selection process. Yeah. So they have a lot of issues. The covers are pretty.
Wow.
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
that's my
That's mine.
Wow. Gabe, how about you? Do you have one?
No, I think Hunger Games was kind of the only like of those books that I read, to be totally honest.
Okay. Well, then I guess I could probably open up one that I didn't read it, but I know my friend did, and that's Legend by Maria Lu. Um, I guess just kind of skimming off of what I remember my friend telling me in like descriptions and stuff. It's set in a um, dystopic US, and I think maybe that's just about it. It's apparently like the name is called The Republic. And Alex, you had mentioned this before, but apparently it's been either really good or really bad.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
remember what I heard about. I've definitely seen people talk about it before.
I mean, aside from that, like I don't know much about them. Like, I don't know if I would want to personally pick it up unless it was very much recommended to me because, like we had said, it's very dystopic YA, and you know, I don't know really what the I would need some strong pull to engage me, and that's actually where I wanted to talk about like why is it that we see an issue with this kind or with this era of storytelling. And I guess to start, for me, why I found or what I found so what I found so problematic about the Hunger Games era of YA is that just a lot of the stories eventually started like feeling the same way, or they eventually started feeling the same. Like, obviously there are the differences, right? Like there is different different names of protagonists, there's different oppressive governments, there's different dystopias, but even then, like the only real difference is me in that sentence is me saying the word different. Like they all fit the same tropes in one way or another, and eventually they all just really kind of end the same way with with the protagonist coming out on top with a few members of their party left, because you got to spice it up by killing a few people. But even then, like as soon as I picked up another book, like I think as soon as I picked up I think the Shatter Me books, as soon as I realized that it was all leading towards a revolution, I'm like, okay. And granted, I haven't even really finished the third book, so I'm probably wrong, but at the same time, it's like it's already, I guess in a way, it's already taking the wind out of your sails. If you kind of if you can predict a lot of things that have happened before and they're just bound to either happen again or happen but or either happen but they just really try to make it different, but it's really not. So, Alex, what would be your main issue with?
I think that the issue is like you have all these tropes. I think what it was the Hunger Games were really successful, and so a lot of the books that came out in the years following the Hunger Games were trying to like latch on to what they thought made the Hunger Games successful, whether they thought it was the rebellion or the like districts or the love triangle, and they tried to take like the thing that they thought made the Hunger Games successful and put their own spin on it so that they could also sell. Um, I still think the Hunger Games, like even though I feel like they kind of started off this ripple effect, I still feel like a lot of authors don't understand what made the Hunger Games successful also. And I feel like one of the big problems that comes from this era is like the misunderstanding of what Suzanne Collins was trying to say in the Hunger Games. And granted, I haven't read the Hunger Games since I was like 12 or 13, so it's been a while. But they're the kind of books that looking back on, I feel like they were very much taken like misconstrued and taken out of context, and given a bad name by all the people trying to get like a taste of their success. And so I think that's one of my big issues with it is that they've kind of they've taken away what I think is probably an important message and replaced it with, wow, love triangles.
Yeah, I can echo.
And as a result, that's the legacy of the Hunger Games, which I think really sucks.
Yeah, I can echo that actually because there were a lot of cool themes that there were a lot of cool tropes There were a lot of tropes that the Hunger Games really made its own, and I guess in a way revolutionized for a lot of YA. But it's just the constant, or it's just repeating it without really sticking to the message that you had said. It kind of cheapens it, I guess.
Yeah, and you also talked about like all of the stories end the same with like the character coming out on top and having this like glorious life forever. And I think one thing that Suzanne Collins did really well is like Katniss, sure, the rebellion came out on top and she helped like change the world, but she still had to deal with like the nightmares and the trauma of being forced into a situation where she was expected to kill other children, um, and that's something that she never really got over. And I think like, I mean, even in the books, Katniss didn't really want to be a part of the rebellion. She was doing it because she felt like she had to because of how bad things were, but she wasn't enthusiastic about being its face.
Yeah.
And then by the end, she felt like she could never trust the government. She had she was traumatized literally, and that's something that she struggled with like all through the rest of her life.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Mockingjay was really depressing.
It was pretty good though. I really liked Mockingjay as a side thing. I didn't like how it was split into 2 movies, but whatever. I still watched them both. I still watched both of them.
Yeah. I need to reread The Hunger Games. They're on my list of books to reread soon.
Yeah. I do too. I need to get a hand on a copy, but I guess anyway, let's just go back to I guess our main issue with it. And Gabe, for you, what do you think the main issue is? Like, it doesn't have to be like a big overarching issue. It could be like a bunch of little things, but
I think it's just genericism, I guess. I don't really feel like I don't know. I feel like they're all just designed to be the exact same thing, I guess, if that makes any sense.
yeah.
Like, I was thinking about this earlier, like, hang on, I feel like with a lot of YA fiction, it's sort of like, not YA, not like just dystopian, but a lot of YA fiction, it's all like very like, okay, here's this protagonist who's the way that they always are, and then they're in a love triangle, and then there's there's like, oh, there's the big government guy, they gotta go fight them. I don't know, I feel like it gets very repetitive very quickly with that genre.
Yeah.
I don't have a very complex opinion on it. I just feel like they're very repetitive.
Well, that is a pretty good point, right? Like, the reason why we call it, or the reason why we've been calling it the Hunger Games era, is because a lot of things, or a lot of popular stories, have been just repeating what the Hunger Games did.
Yeah.
Right? To either great effect or not so great effect. Like, it's been, like, we see the same tropes, we see the same, not necessarily the same story beats, but like everything all just kind of leads into a very similar direction. Not the same direction, but like a very similar one, I guess. And it can be it can be pretty difficult trying to like create your own like unique setting, really. But I guess like we can now talk about like how do we really kind of change the genre a bit, because I don't like dystopic YA is an interesting premise, and the Hunger Games definitely does deserve its credit. But the fact is, like, if people are just going to be ripping off the Hunger Games here and there, then it's not, then the genre, for us at least, is still going to be one that we scrutinize. So, like, what do you think are some ways that we can kind of make it a little bit more interesting?
I feel like the biggest one for me, the biggest hurdle that YA would have to overcome for me to like really get into a lot of YA fiction is like how unlike teenagers, their teenage characters are written. Like
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of their side characters I find act like teenagers a lot, but their protagonists are always these very, very mature characters, and it's sort of it makes when I'm reading them, it makes me wonder like why didn't you just make this character an adult? You clearly wanted to. You clearly had no interest in writing a teenager with, you know, the
Yeah.
kind of shit a teenager might be going through during all this. Like I feel like if you added an element of like sort of coming of age to a lot of these stories, you could add some more depth to them. Like it's all good and well to have a teenager be the hero of like a dystopian like oppressive government future, but like I don't know, I feel like it might add interesting elements to see like actual teenager stuff, like more than just a very generic romance. Like what's a weird crush gonna be like in a world where you can just be shot for saying something stupid. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not really getting this across well, but it's like I feel like if you just added more actual teenage elements and had characters do stuff in the ways that teenagers would, and not just like adults into like they're all written like 20-year-olds, but they're all supposed to be like 13, and it never clicks for me that they're supposed to be the age that they are.
Yeah, I get your point.
Can
Like-
I expand on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go for it.
I think another issue is a lot of authors that write YA are like, oh, I'm writing for teenagers. Teenagers want to read about teenagers. Teenagers don't want to read about adults. And I don't think that's fair either. Like, I get the appeal of reading about characters your own age, but I think some authors need to be less afraid to have their characters actually be adults as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like yeah, like what's a genre that so many teenagers are into? Like comic books. And what's the most populated protagonist of like comic books? It's like adult superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
I will
Yeah.
very actually that brings up a great example for me of like of something that does it in a way that has teenagers. Fucking Teen Titans does it. When Teen Titans
Oh, yeah.
says like, hey, we'll have teenagers be in a city that is usually populated by adults. They didn't just write adult characters and then put them in teenage bodies. They wrote teenagers who had legit teenage angst, and they had legit teenage problems.
Yeah.
Or this is like an example that we bring up a lot on this podcast, but fucking Avatar did this. Avatar didn't write its characters like adults in children's bodies. They wrote them like how children would be going through these events. Like they weren't like they're sometimes upset about the circumstances they're in, and it's pretty understandable. But then you'll have Sokka being Sokka. Like Sokka is not an edge is can you imagine how much shittier Avatar would have been if they didn't have like characters like Sokka or Toph who still act like children amidst their perilous situation?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and again, to expand on that, in Avatar, when you have a character like Katara who ends up being in like a very motherly role, it's addressed in the show as like almost a form of trauma for her, where she lost her mother at a very young age and was expected to take care of her brother, even though he
Mhm.
was older than her, and it's like addressed in the story as something that she struggles with, and it's not painted as a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need to do an episode on that soon. Why Avatar is the perfect story. But I wanted to weigh in on that too, actually, because Gabe, you had mentioned comic books, and one of the more famous superheroes that a lot of like teenagers love is Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
Like Spider-Man, is what, like he's been portrayed a lot younger recently. Like he's typically kind of still in high school and whatever, and that's fine. Like, it's how they portray him as this nerdy, kind of awkward kid, but then he's this badass superhero, or he's this like badass superhero that is still very vulnerable at times. I think that's a really good way of going about it. Like, I don't want to get into debate of like who's the better film version of Spider-Man, but what is it? Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker is a great example of a young adult protagonist, right? On top of that too, like, yeah, you had mentioned Teen Titans, that was a good one, and lately, going back to Spider-Man, actually, the video game that was a PlayStation exclusive, he is what, like, I imagine like 24, 25, given my timestamp.
That's like the post-college Spider-Man era.
Yeah, so even then, like, you have so many like young adults falling for the superhero, because just because it's a young adult franchise doesn't always mean that your characters have to be super mature. Like, bring in the fact that there's a lot of youthfulness to youth, I guess.
Yeah, like, I feel like it's a very annoying trope in a lot of dystopian YA fiction that, like, the circumstances they're in erases the fact that they're still, at the end of the day, they're still children, and they would still act like children, but like a lot of YA just doesn't let them. And I think that would be a big way for a lot of YA fiction to like get a big boost, would be for have your young characters like act their fucking age.
Yeah. Like, I think one of my immediate things that kind of jumps when it comes to fixing that age gap necessarily is just to, like, if you want to have a more mature young adult protagonist, just, I don't know, turn them 18 or 19.
Yeah.
But even then, like, you don't need to do that, because then it would just be a new adult, which in itself is an interesting genre, but I guess that's a whole other tangent. But basically, like, make sure that if you're writing a character, like when you're writing a young adult protagonist, like, don't put the weight of the world on their shoulders.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely one thing for me too. Like, the reason why there are so many tropes, like, I think I had mentioned this in a previous episode, but one trope that I kind of didn't like, or maybe I was alluding to a different trope, was that how there are these really young characters that have quite literally the fate of the world in their hands, and I'm thinking, like, holy shit, this is, I think, like, obviously way too much for a single person to handle, but at the same time, like, they're expected to mature way too quickly, and that robs them really of, like, really, I guess, really, like, teenager moments, like you had said, Gabe. So, like, you can, like, a lot of the fun things that teenagers get to experience, you don't really get that, and what's replaced with it? Teenage angst. You take away so many, like, cute moments that you could have, like, as a teenager, and you just ramp up the angst by them saving the world, and it just makes for a really, like, it makes me cringe.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because we were talking yesterday, and I mentioned Evangelion. You said you hadn't watched Evangelion. I think you should totally check out Evangelion, because that's like the exact premise of Evangelion is a teenager gets the weight of the world put on his shoulders, and his brain fucking snaps in half, because that's what would realistically happen. They wouldn't be like some badass all of a sudden. They would have, like, extreme trauma from it.
Yeah. That's another thing too. Like, I know it's probably looking a little bit too much into it, but the trauma that you were installing into that teenager is super fucked.
Yeah. And they almost never, like, I think we were just talking about Mockingjay, but, like, with the exception of Mockingjay, they almost never really, like, touch on it. Like, the trauma is basically, oh, and now the protagonist is sad occasionally, or something to that effect. They're just, I don't know. It's like a very it's like speed running trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. What else? Like, one other thing probably is, or I guess one other thing to really kind of address that era is, I guess for me personally, and you guys can kind of weigh in on, it's a really obvious one, but don't copy the Hunger Games.
Yeah.
Just that, I think that's pretty much like the simplest way that I can put like my following point. Like, you can have a dystopic YA, you can have a chosen one protagonist, you can have a sorting house system, you can have a special snowflake protagonist, even you can have all of these things, but the second you combine it together, it just feels like another Hunger Games story. No matter how much you try to put a spin on it, to me, I'm probably gonna read it as a Hunger Games story anyway. Unless,
Yeah.
I don't know, you kill the protagonist in the first book, which could be hella interesting, but I don't know how you would carry on from there.
I would totally read a YA like dystopian fiction that like built up like a very generic protagonist and then killed them off and had like the rest of the story following what would have been their side crew having to now be the protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking.
That's
never mind.
As much as I like Attack on Titan, that's basically what I thought Attack on Titan was going to be for a hot minute when it first started.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
You remember that little stint where Eren fake out dies?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that would have been hella interesting, actually.
Yeah, I like where it ended up, but like, yeah,
it'd be a very Game of Thronesy approach, basically.
Yeah, Game of Thrones did that. They set up the whole first book with Sean Bean. I forget his name.
Ned.
And
Ned.
yeah,
Stark. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he fucking dies, and the supporting cast is now left to, I guess, figure out between them who's the protagonist.
The answer is none of them.
Yeah, apparently. The answer is Bran the Broken, apparently. Jesus.
Yeah. How about you guys? What are some ways that you think, or what are some other ways that you think could like help fix that genre or help fix this era?
I mean, I think a lot of authors that are trying to write dystopian stories need to go back and read like older versions of dystopian stories, like read like The Giver and read like 1984. If you really want, go all the way back to Utopia from 15 whatever it was written. Like go back and read older dystopian stories and see what they do, and see like, because it's a really varied genre and there's a lot of things you can do with dystopias, and everyone's just like oppressive government, go.
Yeah.
And then have people with swords fight them, and it's, yeah, like you could explore more technological aspects of it. You could explore like, I mean, another thing is drop the romance. It's not necessary in the dystopian genre. This is my solution to everything, is just drop the romance, apparently.
Yeah, we ended up a whole episode just saying like, fuck love triangles.
I was about to say not to repeat myself, but I think the solution for love triangles is either get rid of it or go beast mode on that shit. Make the bottom parts of the love triangle fuck. Come on.
Or go polyamorous, but don't do that if you're doing a love triangle between siblings. Also, don't do love triangles between siblings because it's really weird.
Oh, that is so weird. What the hell?
Yeah. Please do not.
Oh my god.
Do not do this.
Has there been a series that's done that?
Oh my god.
We had an hour-long discussion about Vampire Knight last night, Dean.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, we did. Okay, yeah, fair enough.
Vampire Knight aside, my friend read a series in grade 12 that was the concept. I don't remember what it was called. It was based on like Indian folklore and stuff. But like it was literally the protagonist was in a love triangle, and both of her love interests were brothers with each other, not related to her, but like with each other. And apparently, both of them were terrible people. So there's also
Okay, maybe in that situation,
Oh,
the
wow.
bottom parts don't fuck each other. In that situation, no.
Yeah. Just-
Yeah. Also, YA authors, stop putting incest in your stories. No one likes it.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks it's weird. Stop.
There's never been a situation where someone was watching a movie or reading a book and then incest happens, and then someone said, "Oh boy, I've been waiting for this."
Okay, look, we could talk about that off podcast. That's a whole other discussion, but
Yeah.
let's wrap it up for tonight.
It's getting late. I gotta go.
Yeah, so thanks everyone for joining in. As always, you can find our social media down below for our Instagram, our Twitter, our Twitch channel, and our YouTube stream channel, where we basically just upload everything from Twitch because Twitch deletes shit after 14 days. As well, you can find our individual social media down in the description along with everyone else. And I think, yeah, because Gabe has to go, we don't really have a closing sequence for tonight, but I think we should just end off and like, yeah, so don't put incest in your YA stories. That's disgusting.
Don't put incest in your YA stories. Make the hunks fuck and write your young characters like they're their age.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
All right.
I have nothing to add.
Yeah. I'm done with this too. So, all right, thanks everyone for tuning in. Have a good night.